women are cool, calm, and collected. Some run right off the rails.
Wish you'd just go away!
Look!
A love-struck woman goes to shocking lengths to keep her man.
What I saw is a person who has no conscience, has no soul.
You good for nothing, cheap!
A wild redhead
Looking at her, you used to look
can't
at me.
quell a hair-triggered temper.
I think men might have underestimated her.
Look at me when I'm talking to you!
And a frustrated mom is swept up in a maelstrom of rage.
She had an enormous anger problem and a really short fuse.
These deadly women are spinning out of control. They are untamed evil. One woman's dream of motherhood
She didn't want to lose her man.
is another woman's nightmare.
I don't think any of us can even imagine how terrifying that is.
In the name of love, just how far will she go?
It truly was the worst of the worst.
Houston, Texas, 2001. Pharmaceutical technician Linda Carty has wonderful news. She and her boyfriend, Jose Corona, have been trying for a baby.
What are you doing?
Practice.
Jose was a laborer. He had made it clear to Linda that he wanted to have children.
Having kids is the most important thing in the world.
Now 42-year-old Linda is finally pregnant. Linda is hoping the baby will bolster their shaky relationship.
He told her that if she was not able to produce him a child, he wanted to end the relationship.
Linda has already suffered 2 failed pregnancies.
She several times told him that she was pregnant, although he was not allowed to go to the doctor with her, and she never had a child, and she would instead tell him, well, I had a miscarriage.
The news of this pregnancy seems too good to be true, because it is.
I think that Carty is a master manipulator. She had been lying to everyone. She had been lying to her boyfriend, saying, I'm gonna have a baby.
She was very well-spoken. She could look you in the eye and lie to you without hesitation.
Jose is tired of Linda's phantom pregnancies. He packs his bags.
You can't leave me. Not with the baby, dude.
I don't believe it.
Look! Look!
I think Linda saw that she needed to produce a child. The relationship was about to be ended, and she was going to be on her own.
Stop it, Linda.
It was a catalyst, a culminating incident, and she obviously had a plan for what she wanted to do, which was to obtain a baby at all cost.
Linda won't have to go far. Her neighbor, Joanna Rodriguez, has something she wants.
Joanne and her husband, Raymundo, did not know Linda Carty at all, had never met them. Linda came up with a plan that she was going to make Joanna's baby her own and present it to Jose as their child together. Linda's motivation was to keep her man, and she didn't care how she was gonna do it.
Jose still refuses to return. So Linda accelerates her plan.
Jose,
What do you want, Linda?
the baby is due any day. I want you to come home.
I don't know, Linda.
She was telling Jose that she was going to have the baby any minute, And she told Jose it's going to be a boy.
She had planned it, she had prepared for it, she had bought items to be able to take care of the baby.
But Linda has a problem. Her neighbor's baby hasn't been born, and she's in a hurry.
Linda Carty would go to any lengths to get herself a baby.
She was prepared to kill a pregnant woman. She was willing to cut open a pregnant woman's stomach and to take a baby. To me, that's extremely shocking. That goes beyond a lot of murders that we see.
She lives over there. It's the same layout.
To help with her plan, Linda enlists 3 local criminals.
She started talking to people she knew, recruiting them.
She lies to them, too.
How much dope?
A lot.
Linda told them that she was aware of an apartment that had 500 pounds of weed in it.
I just want the baby.
And if we break into the apartment, there's money and drugs there, and you can have the money and drugs. All I want is the baby.
The level of planning that Linda put into what she thought was going to be a fetal abduction tells me that she probably was not at all psychotic, that she was highly motivated to get that baby.
But all the planning in the world can't prepare her for this.
So beautiful.
He has your eyes.
Joanna's baby has already been born. Now all Linda has to do is kidnap him. Instead of making this crime simpler, it will make it much more horrifying.
What I saw is a person that did unspeakable acts, who has no conscience, has no soul.
The early hours of May 16th, 2001. Houston, Texas. Joanna Rodriguez and her husband, Raimundo, are asleep with their newborn baby.
So she's laying in bed, probably happy and content.
Rise and shine, fools!
Linda Carty has enlisted a kidnap crew to steal her neighbor's baby.
Come on, man, put the baby in here! Damn, come on!
They grab her baby. They pistol whipped Raimundo.
The men ransack the place, expecting to find drugs.
Where are the drugs, man?
What drugs?
We tie this fool.
They tied up Raimundo, and they brought the baby downstairs. And then they brought Joanna out of the bedroom to the top of the stairs and said, "What do you want to do with her?"
Now she has her prize. Linda could leave Joanna alone.
Linda Carty said, no, we can't do that. She's seen our face. You know, she's seen our faces.
Take her.
Joanna was bound and put in the trunk of Linda's car. Linda drove her to a separate address across town.
The hired henchmen have Linda's little bundle of joy. In return, she promised them drugs and money, but they've been duped.
There was no drugs, there was no money. They had this baby, and they got a woman in a trunk. So they were all very conflicted about what to do.
The men can sense a sinking ship.
I'm out, man. I'm out.
Linda isn't panicking. She's busy tying up loose ends.
Linda is standing by her open car trunk, and Joanna, at this point, has a bag over her head, a plastic bag. She's tied up with duct tape.
Joanna died of suffocation, a very horrible, a very painful, and a very prolonged death. The bag and the tape that was taken from her head had the imprint of her face, of her mouth, and her nose in it.
Sophisticated criminals know how to get what they want from other people without killing them, but that wasn't what was happening here.
Linda takes the baby and hides out at a motel. She has moved from manipulator to murderer.
What kind of a killer is Linda Carty? I think the worst kind.
When it turned out she was no longer pregnant, she deliberately killed the woman just so that she could have the baby. She kidnapped her and killed her.
It seems ironic that a woman who wants to be a mother so badly could cold-heartedly steal another woman's baby.
Linda's foray into motherhood is short-lived. The next morning, one of Joanna's neighbors gives police a tip-off.
A neighbor told them there used to be a lady who lived here by the name of Linda Carty, and she said she was going to have a baby boy. And I didn't think she was pregnant.
They have Linda in custody in less than 24 hours. The baby is unharmed.
I remember Raimundo telling me that while he was overjoyed that his baby was safe and overjoyed at being reunited, he was just heartbroken that his wife was dead.
Linda Carty is charged with the murder of Joanna Rodriguez. As usual, Linda lies to protect herself, claiming the henchmen were framing her. But the evidence says otherwise.
The investigation was fairly straightforward. They had the baby clothes and the baby food that Linda Carty had bought. They even had a receipt from the medical supply store, and the clerk at the medical supply store was able to identify Linda Carty as the person who came in and purchased the medical supplies.
One of the men involved in the baby heist, Chris Robinson, testifies against her.
While I don't condone anything that Chris did, at least he stepped up to the plate and he did the right thing. He told the truth, and the person who caused all of this to happen is where she needs to be.
On February 21st, 2002, Linda Carty is found guilty and given the maximum sentence under Texas law: death by lethal injection.
She is a person who will stop at nothing to get what she wants. Joanna Rodriguez will never live again. Little Raimundo will never know his mother, ever. That's not something you can take back.
As she sits on death row, Linda Carty continues to maintain her innocence.
I'm not aware of Linda Carty ever showing any remorse.
Linda will never admit that she did this. Right up until the moment they put the needle in her arm, she will be denying it.
In a lawless part of Texas,
She was in the big thick of some of the worst criminal activity.
a woman lives life with her finger on the trigger
Her way of solving problems was violent.
and goes through husbands like she goes through whiskey.
She claimed self-defense, but they weren't buying it.
Houston, Texas, 1952. 36-year-old Margie Hamilton runs a dive bar on the shady side of town.
Come on, hurry up.
You want me to clean you up next?
Maggie Hamilton, when she was in Houston, owned a bar down near the ship channel.
You need better friends.
Attracted real tough characters, longshoremen and sailors.
Something amusing you?
Those places were tough.
You're pretty tough for a little lady.
You don't know the half of it.
Margie falls for the charms of 34-year-old sailor Michael Zeglin. Margie becomes Mrs. Zeglin. Michael is attracted to Margie's feisty temper. He soon regrets it.
That marriage was just riddled, I think, from beginning with problems all along, and he was threatening to leave a number of times.
Before long, Michael Zeglin wants a divorce, but Margie won't let him go without a fight.
He was in the bedroom packing his suitcase. Another fight was provoked.
What's going on?
Tired of fighting. I want out.
You are not leaving me.
She got her gun.
Now.
And he ran out of the house, and then she's going from window to window looking for him. And then she spots him. She sees him in the backyard.
Margie, stop!
She fires one shot.
The bullet went through the open door and went out the open window, just in time for Zeglin to stop the bullet in his head as he ran past the window.
His wife realizes what she's done.
I killed him.
She told them to call an ambulance for him. I've killed him, I've killed him.
Margie was acting as if she cared by telling the ambulance drivers, "Don't hurt him," and crying over him.
Margie Zeglin is charged with murder. On trial, she claims she was protecting herself from a violent husband.
She claimed self-defense, but they weren't ultimately buying it.
Because Margie's been down this road before.
While Maggie Hamilton is on trial, the prosecutor asks if she shot her first husband. And she says yes. I used the same pistol. You couldn't write a script like that in Hollywood.
Drinks from me! Get on your knees. Bartender, I'll have
6 years earlier, Margie is married to 28-year-old rodeo rider Andy Robinson.
Watch it, you.
It appears that Maggie Hamilton had a temper. It came to the surface frequently.
October 2nd, 1946, Margie's short fuse has just been lit.
Robinson and Margie were having a fight. Of course, Robinson, from what I understand, was alcoholic, and I think that Margie was probably on her way. drinking kind of heavily.
Tonight, Margie learns how to stand up to husbands.
I swear I'll cut you.
He said he was gonna cut her up. He had a knife. She had her automatic. He just emptied 3 slugs into his stomach.
Her way of solving problems was violent, with a gun. Bang, bang, you're dead.
Andy's murder lands Margie in the local jail. But she isn't locked up for long.
She was arrested, of course, but she was not held or tried because he threatened her life, she said. People in this hotel where they were, they heard the fight, and the guy had been nasty to her on and off. So they let, she was simply, they let it go.
The pretty little redhead has turned into a cold-hearted killer because Margie has violence in her blood. She was suckled by sin.
Margie came from a family where crime and violence was the norm.
And that family hooked up with the toughest criminals of the time.
Bonnie and Clyde.
1933, West Dallas, Texas. The Great Depression brings America to its knees.
You'll get done doing that one.
But the criminally inclined are sitting pretty. The greatest mob of all, the Bonnie and Clyde gang. One of Bonnie and Clyde's crew is 20-year-old jack of all crimes, Raymond Hamilton.
Raymond was considered one of the best car thieves ever.
Stick to them tellers at the front. You know?
Clyde liked to work with Ray because Ray fancied himself kind of as a very dashing bank robber type.
Ray's little sister is tough-talking teenager Margie Hamilton.
Maggie appears to have gotten involved in criminal activities in West Dallas pretty early. By age 18, she was married to this burglar and outlaw named Herbie Ferris. He and his brother had a little gang of burglars and car thieves.
Margie is only 18, but the seeds of crime are already sown.
It's unlikely Margie had a chance of being a nonviolent, sweet, warm, productive member of society.
January 6th, 1933, Margie is keeping watch at her West Dallas home, a known safe house for Bonnie and Clyde. The police show up, hoping to surprise the gangsters, but Margie is one step ahead of the law.
The red light would be in a window. That meant that the law was there.
Turn it off.
It's for the children.
She said it's a nightlight for my children. There were 3 children in that house.
Off now.
So she turned the light out. Clyde came around and saw the light was out. His sixth sense told him that there's trouble.
The teenager puts her life on the line to warn Clyde.
Be careful of the children!
He told him to get back, and he didn't get back, and so he just shot him. And threw him across the porch, the force of the buckshot.
That incident is the first time I was aware of Maggie Hamilton at all, because she was in the big thick of that.
It sets Margie up for a life of gunslinging.
If a woman has a gun and an attitude and a temper, eventually that gun is coming out.
2 decades later, Margie is in trouble with the law for disposing of pesky husbands.
I don't think Margie was a man-hater. She kept marrying them. but she kept shooting them. Margie that's the way she solved disputes.
She shot one husband and got away with it. In November 1952, Margie is on trial for shooting her next husband, Michael Zeglin. This time, her story of self-defense doesn't work.
She was convicted, and she was sentenced to 5 years.
But 6 months later, Margie is out on an appeal bond and goes back to running the bar.
There still might have been a hint of the wild, wild west in Texas in the 50s. If someone ended up on the wrong side of that gun, it was their fault.
But Margie's wild past catches up with her. New customer Jesse Muirhead
You remember Hamilton?
has a bone to pick with the Hamilton family.
Always wanted to whip Mayor Hamilton.
I think men might have underestimated her.
You got no manners. I think you should buy everyone around.
I don't put on drinks for anybody.
He didn't want to do that, and she finally asked him to leave. He started getting nasty.
You and your no-good family. I'm gonna get you.
Jesse has just picked a fight with the wrong filly.
He'd always wanted to have a fight with a Hamilton, and he kept going on and on and on. And she pulled out a gun. Shot him 3 times.
It's Morty's over.
Help me call an
You gotta
ambulance.
get down here.
What the hell are you still doing here?
I just shot another man.
Ow!
She told the police later she was just trying to scare him, but she hit him 3 times.
Got him once in the leg and 2 in the stomach. And it was a big problem.
Margie tells the police she was aiming at the floor.
She said, oh, I shot at the floor, and it probably bounced up, the bullet did.
It is extremely unlikely that all 3 shots were the result of a ricochet.
Oh, goddamn!
He was shot inside a small room. There were no pillars or posts or anything else that could have gotten in the way. In all likelihood, that simply didn't happen.
She is charged with assault to murder.
Her only concern was the bar might have to close that weekend. It's not good to close bars on weekends, she said.
Once again, Margie gets away with it. The police believe her story and drop the case.
She was not prosecuted or anything for that. It was clear what happened.
The fiery redhead raised on crime used a gun to solve every problem. Unlike her heroes, Bonnie and Clyde, Margie Zeglin never pays for her crimes. Despite shooting 3 men, she is free and marries twice more.
Some might say Margie chose the wrong men. I would say her husbands that are dead, by her hand, chose the wrong wife.
Becoming a mother.
Mom! He really wanted his mum to love him.
Don't be a baby. Come here.
Doesn't guarantee a loving heart.
She was just beside herself with rage.
I wish I'd never had
One mom takes pleasure from pain.
It was torture. She enjoyed it.
2004, in the country town of Tamworth, Australia. 23-year-old Rachel Fitzner is a single mom, caring for her 4-year-old daughter. When her landlady's son, Paul Shillingsworth, walks into her life, Rachel sees new hope.
They met, they started seeing each other. Paul made her feel loved. And, you know, underneath everything, that was important to Rachel.
The couple moves to Sydney together, and in 2005, they have a son, Dean. But instead of bringing them together, parenthood pushes them apart because Rachel is plagued by old demons.
It appears that Rachel was raised in a chaotic environment. Alcohol abuse, physical violence, drug abuse. And that's exactly what Rachel perpetuated in her own adulthood.
Look at me when I'm talking to you!
She had an enormous anger problem and a really short fuse.
Rachel fuels her fury with illicit drugs.
Rachel was a cannabis user, so she used marijuana from her late teens.
One of the things Rachel did, in addition to the usual suspects of drugs, that a lot of kids don't do, she sniffed solvents. This can cause brain damage. Brain damage can lead to violence.
Rachel always had a tendency to be violent and a tendency to be angry and a tendency to be unable to control her impulses. So what drugs did was just completely enable that.
While Rachel is high on drugs, Paul hits the bottle.
What do you think you're doing?
It's a match made in hell.
This was a love-hate relationship. At times they would be passionately on together. At times, you know, they'd walk out in a huff. It was an unstable, volatile relationship. Rachel was certainly not the sort of person who would, you know, just shut up and take it.
Go to bed!
The volatile couple finally splits in 2006. And Rachel is left holding the baby.
Really, right from the beginning, the relationship between Dean and his mother Rachel was a troubled one.
Dean was a really sweet little boy, a little toddler who liked Superman outfits.
In Rachel's eyes, Dean is no superhero. He's a villain. A constant reminder of her violent ex-boyfriend.
Every time she looked at Dean, she saw Paul, and she wanted to enact her revenge on Paul.
She starts starving Dean of food and affection.
You're fat enough. Get out of here.
Dean would sometimes try and get affection from her, and she'd say he was clingy and would push him off or even smack him.
Dean's grandmother, Anne, decides enough is enough.
She saw that Rachel didn't like Dean, that he wasn't being cared for properly.
In late 2006, Anne wins full-time custody of her grandson, and the toddler finally gets the love he's been craving.
Dean got a lot of good stuff from his grandmother when he was with her. Love, attention, stroking, petting.
He was beautifully cared for. He was a happy little child. He had a lovely relationship with his grandmother. He was growing up perfectly normally.
But Rachel's rage takes over. She won't give in to her enemies.
She wasn't prepared to let Dean's father and his grandmother have custody of Dean, basically just to spite them. Not because she wanted Dean, not because she loved Dean, but because she hated them.
Here.
In July 2007, Rachel takes her son for her regular visitation. This time, she won't be returning him.
Rachel took Dean from his custodial grandmother and kept him. That was a warning sign. She was non-compliant and defying a court order. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't.
Shut up or I will make you shut up. Get out.
Rachel wants her son back for one reason: to resume his suffering.
He did the tiniest thing to irritate her, even just to say, "Mummy, mummy." She thought he was clingy and she'd throw him outside.
And you'd have this child who was only 2.5 years old at the time, clamouring to get back in, begging his mother to allow him to come back inside.
Little Dean endures 4 months of torment, but it won't appease his malicious mother. Rachel's vile temper is about to explode.
I wish I'd never had you.
What Rachel did to Dean was more than abuse. It was torture. She enjoyed it.
October 11th, 2007, Sydney, Australia.
Hey, how's it going?
Rachel Fitzner takes her 2-year-old son, Dean, on a rare outing to a friend's place.
Don't you eat anything.
Dean was pretty much an annoyance to Rachel. And not just an irritation, but a thorn in her side.
Rachel hates living with her son, but she won't live without him. She is keeping Dean to spite her ex-boyfriend, Paul, and his mother, Anne.
She was just beside herself with rage. Rage not only at Dean and through Dean to his father.
Oh, every time I look at him, I see his Paul. He's just a kid.
When the starving toddler stares at Rachel's friends eating lunch, he doesn't know he's on a knife's edge.
They had burgers. Noticed that Dean was clearly hungry. You know, he must have been looking at them intently, poor little thing.
There you go, buddy.
So one of these men gave him a hamburger, and the boy started to eat. Rachel came into the room, saw her 2.5-year-old son eating a hamburger, and went ballistic, absolutely ballistic.
I said don't eat anything!
And when this little boy accepted food from people that he barely knew, I think she just became consumed with rage, took him home immediately.
Rachel decides to deal with Dean away from prying eyes.
I warned you not to eat anything.
So when they got home, Rachel's fury hit fever pitch.
Wish you'd just go away! I hate you.
She grabbed him, she shook him. She threw him on the ground, grabbed him by his hoodie straps and twirled him around.
Rachel would have had to have shaken him very violently and for quite a while to inflict the damage that she did.
Rachel walks away, then returns for round 2.
After Rachel shook Dean the first time, she had time to think about what she was doing and stop. But she thought about what she was doing and went back and finished him off.
The mother wraps her son in plastic
and shoved him into the suitcase. And we don't know how he died. He might have died from the shaking. He might have died from the asphyxiation. He might have been still conscious when she put him in that plastic bag and put him into the suitcase.
Rachel then takes a stroll to the local park to wash all her cares away.
And then took the suitcase to a nearby duck pond and threw it as far as she could into the duck pond.
And no doubt hoped it would disappear.
But one person is missing Dean. His grandmother, Anne.
It's Anne Coffey.
And when Anne Coffey started checking, trying to find out where Dean was,
I'm worried.
by that stage, Dean had already died.
Authorities can't find Dean until Rachel's dark secret resurfaces from the duck pond.
The police put two and two together and realised that this body that had been found in the dam was the body of Dean Shillingsworth.
The police go straight to Rachel Fitzner. At first, she claims she shook Dean by accident.
Rachel says she realized what she had done and performed CPR for about 10 minutes. I don't believe that for 1 minute.
I said don't eat anything!
Family and friends say Rachel has been tormenting Dean for months. In August 2009, Rachel Fitzner finally confesses to murder. She is sentenced to 25 years, 6 months in prison. The tiny superhero could not battle his own mother's wicked rage.
There was a grandmother out there, desperate to look after him, desperate to love him, desperate for the day when she would be reunited with him.
I believe Rachel wanted Dean dead. She said she'd kill him before she'd give him back to his loving grandmother. Well, she got what she wanted.
It was really the union of two incredibly troubled people that led to this tragedy. When they got together, doomsday was inevitable.
These women couldn't control their wild emotions. Linda Carty yearned for a baby at any price. Margie Zeglin had fire in her belly and a heart of stone. And Rachel Fitzner's overwhelming rage propelled her to a pitiless place. They were deadly women, driven by untamed evil.